Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Jovanovich, and I'm the reviews editor for Artforum magazine. On behalf of both Artforum and Bookforum, I'd like to welcome you to Party, Pose, Power, a conversation between two extraordinary artistic talents, the Los Angeles-based photographer Reynaldo Rivera and longtime New Yorker Linda Simpson, also a photographer and one of the city's preeminent drag personalities. The reason we're gathered here today is to discuss and celebrate the publication of two very important photo collections. Reynaldo Rivera's Notes from a Disappeared City, which was put out by Semiotext earlier this month, and Linda Simpson's The Drag Explosion from Domain, which comes later this month. Both Rivera and Simpson culturally came of age on opposite sides of the US during the 1980s and 90s. Again, Reynaldo in Los Angeles, Linda in New York, documenting and participating in the queer club scenes of their respective cities. Today, the artists will briefly present a selection of their works. Afterwards, I'll have the honor of talking to them about their photographs, which will then be followed by a Q&A session with all of you. So, without further ado, let me introduce our esteemed guests. Reynaldo Rivera's black and white pictures of a vanished Los Angeles and its glamorous night-crawling denizens are in the same league as those who were taken by photographers such as Lisette Mondel and Broussais, whose work Reynaldo discovered as a boy while scouring used bookstores and thrift shops in Stockton, California, where his father would take him to earn money by picking fruit. The young Reynaldo, like many alienated queer kids who can't stomach the drear and banality of straight mainstream life, immersed himself in the films of old Hollywood and the golden age of Mexican cinema, absorbing the preternatural beauty and captivating charm of screen queens including Maria Felix and Gloria Martin, Marlene Dietrich, and Jean Harlow. Be it a desolate bus station with a glowing TV on which some pretty actress's face appears through televisual static, or a full-body portrait of glittering trans entertainer Tatiana Volti performing at LA's Silver Lake Lounge, Reynaldo imbues his subjects with the tenderness and emotional intelligence worthy of George Cukor or Douglas Sirk. His richly monochromatic photos of queer and Latinx communities are as smart as they are seductive, as formally rigorous as they are romantic, and as evocative as they are electric. They are time-bending documents of people and places that were snapped decades ago, yet feel as though they were taken last week or even just last night. But that's the way Reynaldo's magic works. The artist was a longtime photographer for LA Weekly, and he is currently represented by Rena Spalling's Fine Art. His work is also being featured in this year's Made in LA Biennial at the Hammer and Huntington Museums, which are closed right now due to the pandemic, but will reopen again in 2021. His work has also been included in the group show Comedy of Errors at the Gallery, an exhibition space located in Hollywood, which runs until January of next year. Thank you so much for joining us, Reynaldo. Linda Simpson founded the seminal queer zines My Comrade and its sapphic sibling, Sister. Linda, along with other storied New York queens such as Lady Bunny, Happy Face, and Floyd, reinvigorated drag for a newer generation of queers at downtown Manhattan clubs during the 1980s and 90s, including The Pyramid, Boy Bar, and Mother. Since then, the performer, activist, historian, and raconteur has been a hostess at numerous venues, among them New York's Le Poisson Rouge, the Hotel Chantel, and Cybar Lounge. Her new book, The Drag Explosion, is based on a roving slideshow presentation of the same name, which has been entertaining audiences around the US and Europe for ages. To find out more about the event and, of course, the book, please visit thedragexplosion.com. Linda has also written and produced 4 dark comedies, The Tranny Chase and the final episode, both of which were produced at Performance Space New York, formerly PS 122, along with The Bad Hostess at La Mama Theater and The Emperor's New Codpiece at the Laurie Beachman Theater on 42nd Street. She has contributed text to numerous publications, including Out Magazine and Artforum, and was the editor of Time Out New York's gay and lesbian section for 3 years. Her photographs have been featured at numerous institutions, including the Museum of the City of New York and the International Center of Photography, also in New York. A solo exhibition of her photographs at the gallery Tiger Strikes Asteroid in Brooklyn, titled Where Love Lives, closed just last month. And for those of you who still live in a constant state of pandemic dread and ennui, please let lovely Linda into your home via Zoom on Saturday nights as the hostess of the joyous and life-affirming digital event, Linda Loves Bingo, which you can learn more about at lindalovesbingo.com. Thanks so much for taking part in tonight's talk, Linda. And before we start, I'd like to give tremendous thanks to Jennifer Krasinski, Artforum's digital editorial director, for making this conversation possible, and to Brian J. Green, Artforum's tech maestro, who's making sure tonight's voyage goes as smoothly as possible. With that, Linda, I give it to you.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. You can hear me now, right?
Yep, perfectly.
Well, thank you, Alex, so much for that wonderful intro. I'm assuming you wrote that. That was lovely. And I think it made me out to be a little more than I actually am, but thanks a lot. And as Alex mentioned, I have a book coming out this month called The Drag Explosion, the same name as this slideshow that I have. And it's all my photos from New York's drag scene in the 80s and 90s. I started doing drag in the late 80s, and I just happened to carry around a camera, got a lot of photos, but they were all random, just for fun. And it was a couple decades later that I realized, you know, this is sort of a good time capsule. And so I put it together in this slideshow, and it tells the history of that era. And there was an arc. Drag sort of, when I started, was more of kind of like an East Village underground thing. And then it became more and more popular. It was kind of discovered by the nightclubs at large and the media, pop culture, etc. So it was a drag explosion. And I'm not a photographer per se, but I guess I, you know, have a little bit of an eye. And I just was, you know, carrying around like simple point and shoot cameras. And I managed to get a lot of, you know, what I think are fun photos and good ones even. But a lot of it was just drag queen magic. It wasn't, I was at the right place at the right time. So anyways, the photos that I'm going to show right now are all from my upcoming book, The Drag Explosion. It's being published overseas. So I was kind of hoping it would be here by now, but it will be here very, very soon. And I'm excited for it. As Alex mentioned, you can go to domainbooks.org and pre-order, and it'll come to the comfort of your own home. Okay, after that commercial, let's, Brian, our wonderful tech person, could you go to the first image? So this photo is from the Pyramid Club dressing room. And the dressing room was a big hub back then. And I was throwing parties back then also. Like, I think this photo's from 92, I think. And anyways, the Pyramid, which had been like a hotbed of the kooky avant-garde East Village drag scene, was fading by the end of the 80s, but we started our party of the 90s and kind of revived it. And in this picture on the left is Lady Bunny, who of course is still going strong. And there's Mistress Formica, Sweetie, Anaconda, and Taboo. And Taboo is now an artist, a fine artist. I mean, it was back then, just had an opening recently at Gordon Robichaud, which is really beautiful. Anyways, I like this photo because it looks sort of like a painting. You could go to the next image, please, Brian. And this is my friend Little Whitney and Juan. And this was actually for a photo shoot. Someone else was taking the photos for My Comrade magazine, which Alex mentioned I used to publish. It was an underground, revolutionary gay magazine that was sort of a reaction to the depressing times in the late 80s with the AIDS crisis. And so the magazine was all about sort of sexiness and defiance and had a revolutionary, format. Anyways, they were posing for a photo shoot. And this was at someone's apartment down on Broadway. Some of these people I'm showing the photos of are no longer with us, but I like to think of them as all still being here. So you could go to the next image, please, Brian. And this was actually a photo shoot for My Comrade magazine too. Again, I wasn't taking the photos that appeared in the magazine, but just stepped in and took a snapshot. And the drag queen with the blonde hair is named Christy Love. And I unfortunately lost touch with her, but Daisy is a friend of mine and we've remained in contact over the years. And this was obviously in front of like a peep show kind of sex store. And I think this was actually in Chelsea. It was like on 6th Avenue, I think. But, you know, back in the day, those kind of storefronts were a lot more common in Manhattan. I live by Times Square and there's a couple of them left. But back then, it was easier to go out to a sex store. And look, it was only 25 cents for a XXX video. Okay, Brian, you could go to the next one. Oh, this is my friend Paige. And Paige was a great friend of mine. And I actually have a book that's already come out. And the book is called Pages. And it's all solo shots of her. Paige was a transgender and really very interesting person, very beautiful, and had a really kind of, cutting edge personality, great sense of humor. We were great friends. This apartment, this picture is at my apartment. We both lived on 13th Street, just a couple buildings away from each other. So we saw each other quite a lot, including, you know, at night, including during the day. But Paige made a huge impact on my life. Paige is no longer with us, but the book is, you know, that I did on her is real dedication. And Paige was always like real stunningly beautiful and very eccentric in her attire. So she was always quite striking. You can go to the next photo, Brian. This is, the girl on the left is an Italian woman named Danielle, and she was just living in New York for a very short while. And the other person, Luma, was a friend. And this is at Webster Hall, up on the 2nd floor. And this picture was like, I can't remember, 94 or 95, but at this time, nightlife was very, very expansive. There was a lot of big clubs in New York City: Webster Hall, the Palladium, Club USA, Tunnel, Roxy. I mean, the list goes on. And they were all really capable of holding like hundreds and thousands of people. And so nightlife was this whole, industry in its own right. And it was very exciting. And drag and, just flamboyance was very in. And people would get dressed up just to go out to the clubs, which Luma and Danielle were just out for a night on the town. They weren't working at the club. So you could go to the next image. And this is a picture, of course, of RuPaul. And next to her is Willie Ninja, who was the most famous voguer of the time. He was from the House of Ninja and was featured like in Malcolm McLaren videos. And this was at the Coffee Shop restaurant, which was right across from Union Square. And the Coffee Shop restaurant, I think, closed earlier this year. But back then, it was new. This picture is in '91. And it was when Wigstock, the annual drag festival, was at Union Square just for 1 year. It was there. And we were sitting at a booth before the activity started. Both RuPaul and Willie performed later that day. And this was right when Ru was getting into her like glamour look. I mean, it's still, fairly basic compared to what she gives now. But before then, she was a lot more crazy and all over the place with her looks. I always love the way Ru looks. And I think even in this picture, even though, compared to today's makeup, it's a little raw, but I think she looks great. So anyways, and Willie I didn't know very well, but he was always very sweet and incredible to see as a dancer. All right, you could go to the next image. This is my friend Lola. And we were coming, it was very late, we were coming from an after hours club, and somebody gave us a ride. I don't even remember who, but so it's dawn, not sunset here in this photo. And this is on 13th Street. We were dropping me off first where I lived, and then Lola would continue on. And I never saw her again. No, I'm just kidding. Lola went home, and we're still friends today too. But Lola was very beautiful, still is. And I think this is a great photo of her. It's her in New York too, of course. And this is Lady Bunny. And this is at Webster Hall. And Bunny hosted at a lot of different clubs. And she was hosting that night. She would, get paid to just kind of like be crazy and run around. And happened to I said, let's take a photo, I think. And she just, hopped on the couch. But it's a great photo of Bunny. Very glamour, girl. And if I may so, she looks best she ever has. All right, so we could go to another image. And I think, do I have more images? Maybe I don't. No, I got more. This is Chris Tanner doing, and this was actually at the 25th anniversary of Stonewall. This wasn't just like a regular, this is Yankee Stadium, but it wasn't just like a regular sports activity. It was, as a matter of fact, a special LGBT event. And so Chris and me and some other people were backup dancers for Cyndi Lauper. I can't dance at all, but Chris was okay. And my book, as mentioned, has an arc. And so what it shows is like the East Village scene that I got involved in was this kind of underground, very, modern scene that was sort of recreating drag or creating drag in a new kind of vein. And then it eventually, all of nightlife started embracing drag, and then pop culture media started embracing drag, and drag got out of the clubs. I mean, there we are during the day. And this photo sort of illustrates this. And we could go to the next photo. And as mentioned, the nightlife was really thriving during this time too. And this was when the club kids scene was really big also. This is Kabuki Starshine and Kide, excuse me. And they both were big stars of the club kids scene. And this was at the Limelight, which was kind of headquarters for all of it. And some of the club kids called themselves drag queens. So there was a lot of like overlapping in between like, different camps of drag. And the club kids scene eventually went down sort of in flames, but it was very exciting. I was no club kid by any means, but I loved exploring that world because it was such a visual delight. Okay, we can go on to the next photo. I chose this photo because I thought that this is Kathy, my friend Kathy Valdez, and she reminded me of some of the girls that you see in Reynaldo's photos that we will be showing. Kathy's Puerto Rican, and I think Reynaldo's big ethnic group is Mexican Americans, but Latin power. And this was at a party, and the party happened to be at some fetish studio. So it was kind of a hoot. We were just posing for photos with all this like, fetish equipment around. I mean, and Kathy, was game to pose in front of this cage. And so, we were having a blast, all, nightlife, pop culture stars, media stars. It did come to an end. I don't want to give too much away in case you want to buy my book, but it was a drag explosion that lasted from like the late 80s to the mid 90s. And then because media lost interest and Giuliani administration started clamping down on the nightlife, it all kind of came to an end. And drag certainly continued, but a glorious golden age only lasted for like, the years I mentioned, the late 80s to the mid 90s. I think that's all the images, right? Oh, one more. This is at Wigstock. Wigstock was the annual drag festival with Lady Bunny as the organizer. This is in Tompkins Square Park. And this is Kier, Lady Miss Kier from the band Delight, and Dimitri also. They were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. And then Toa Toa, the DJ, is in the back, and they comprised Delight. And even though they're not, you know, in drag per se, I mean, as drag queens, they certainly have their own draggish look. And, you know, it was just, I thought that they really summed up the kind of like fresh energy of that time. This photo, I think, is from 88 or maybe 89. And the other queen in the back is Desmond, who only dresses very occasionally in drag. I think that was my last photo, right? Yes. So there it is. That's a sampling of some of my photos that are in my slideshow, The Drag Explosion, and as mentioned, my book that's coming up with the same name. There's 250 photos. No, not 250 photos. There's 250 pages in my new book. So there's quite a few photos, some from my slideshow, some aren't. I should mention that David Knowles, the art designer who also owns the publishing company, Domain, did a wonderful job, an incredible job of juxtaposing the photos. And I'm very excited to see it in person.
Thank you so much, Linda. That was a fabulous presentation, just like fabulous you.
Oh, I'm blushing.
It's true. And it is my honor absolutely to introduce right now, Reynaldo Rivera. So Reynaldo, take it away.
Hello, kids. Well, you know, I was listening to Linda and earlier I was talking to Jessica about, well, this book that we put together here with Semiotext, and how when I gave it to my niece, I was, you know, I told her it was like a photo album of her family, basically. And I think this is how I've seen this project from the get-go. And I mean, like early on when we first started talking about this with Chris Cross, by the way, I think this is where the idea was that, you know, the city was changing so quickly. I mean, there was a time when, I think a lot of us didn't think LA would change like San Francisco or New York, like some of these other cities that completely got gentrified. We didn't think that would happen here, or that they would change so quickly. And when I started seeing this happen is when this idea of putting this book together started. And so, you know, and in thinking this is where how we put these photos together. Anyway, I'm gonna show some of these images and then we could talk about this stuff, I guess, after, right? Can you put the images on? So I'm gonna show some, these are all from, well, family, friends, parties. This is my friend at a party we had for Christmas, I think, back in 1988. I'm gonna go through these kind of quick because there's a lot of images. This was at a fundraiser for performers in like 87. This is my friend Aneta and my partner, Christopher Ariana. Again, all these are like party photos. My friend Sari, Cindy Gomez, I forgot her name. Anyway, my sister Connie, someone somewhere. This was at a club called the Cunt Club. She was my Madonna of Cunt Club. This was at my sister's birthday party. I mean, you know, this was a long time ago. This was back in 1989 for Halloween. And that was my friend Elise and Javier getting ready to go out back in the 90s. This is the 90s. My sister and friend. My sister and Daniel Martinez. Ruben Martinez, Francesco Siqueiros, and my sister. I forgot her name. What's her name, Joseph? Tommy Chiffon. How did I forget that? Two of my Sapphic sisters, and here's my, I guess, later in the party from the other photos, as you could tell. These are two girls at a bar back on Sunset that is no longer there. Birthday party. This is the Super Elegantes. I'm gonna kind of go through this because I have a lot of photos, but this was another birthday party. Me. Me. This is Vaginal, who is also, who me and her did a conversation that's in the book at a fashion show in the somewhere in the 90s. And this is Olga from the Silver Lake Lounge. There were two Olgas back in the day, the La Plaza Olga and the Silver Lake Lounge Olga, and I guess they hated each other because they both thought they were the real mothers. And this is one of the boyfriends from one of the girls and a guy that I guess at one time was a stripper. And these kind of photos were a little rare back in those days because most of the performers were not this open about their private lives, especially the guys that dated them were, this kind of image was not, I mean, unlike Linda's images where I think maybe over there they were a little more open about all this stuff. I mean, here, most of the performers I knew, a lot of these women that were in these photos were not this open about, what they were doing, because a lot of them didn't, I guess, go on their life like this. And if they did, they sure didn't want you to know that, or anyone to know that they were working at. This is one of the girls from the Silver Lake Lounge, Stephanie. And this is Miss Tatiana Volti, who was a really famous performer in Mexico City back in, I think she started in the 70s. Then she moved to LA. And I guess her claim to fame was that she was in a Jodorowsky movie. I think it was either her first or second, The Holy Mountain, or the some kind of mountain, no? Anyway, I can't remember. And here's Mrs. Stephanie again. I really love this girl. She was amazing. She just exuded everything. And this is my Cindy Sherman moment. I don't know, I mean, that could be her, right? This was Montenegro. And here's her. Yeah, these are all the well, that was from the Silver Lake Lounge. This is Le Bar. This was at La Plaza. Oh, sorry about that. This is images from La Plaza, which is, as clubs went, this was like where the performers that were the better ones, I guess, the ones that passed would, they were like the top of the food chain. So these girls would, they knew they were the bomb. So these images are from this club. And usually to be able to be in the back, in this back room where they were dressing and stuff was, again, not this common, because they just didn't really, most of the time, didn't really trust most people, and they didn't want to be photographed because it's, because this whole thing was supposed to be an illusion. So I guess they didn't, I also didn't want to bust their illusion either. But anyhow, the images were taken in their dressing rooms, and I really think are some of the better ones. In their special moments, and most of these folk are gone. I mean, they were gone by the time I even developed these images back in the early 90s. Olga, which is the mama girl in the image, she died really soon after this image, and Paloma, which was on the left. But the girl in the middle, she's still around and kicking. So this is Mrs. Olga in a quiet moment. And this, oh, I went too far, sorry about that. Oops, what happened here? Anyway, I guess I went, this is Gabby from La Plaza. And this is Olga again, in a quiet moment. And this girl, I photographed right before I stopped going there in the late 90s, so I didn't really know her. This is Mrs. Alex, who is the one that she was the first one I actually met, and I interviewed her back in those days and got me started taking photos in those places because I really thought she was super amazing. She came from this little village in Mexico, Alvarado, this little town, which me and my sister had been there once. Like, we got stuck there once by mistake, and there were like no buses leaving there for days. So I knew where she came from, and it was pretty amazing. And she had told me how, you know, when she was a kid, this like busload of transvestites had gone through her town. You know, I guess they were like doing performances, and they the bus broke down, and they were performing there. And I guess before they left, they were like, you know, doing their business on the park. And the town people found out, and they all went and started chasing all these people out of the park, and they all took off running to the bus, and she took off with them. And she must have been like 13 when she left. And that was the beginning of her life as a performer. And she became a super huge star in Mexico City. And then she left Mexico City following her bodybuilding boyfriend to Los Angeles, of where then, of course, he dumped her, and she stayed here. And she used to write a column for La Jornada called like Letters from Hollywood or some crap like this. But anyhow, she was pretty amazing. And anyway, I started this whole thing because of her. Well, the images of these performers, and that's her again. In her later days, she also is gone. And this is Moogie's, Asian bar in Hollywood somewhere, who's now is again also gone. That one was actually the owner of the bar, Yoshi-san. She performed at Moogie's. These are all the girls from Moogie's. Ooh, and I didn't know the other girl. Yes, they were. It was interesting because you would get a really like mix of folk in this club. I mean, you would get like the owner's like mother and her dad hanging out in the front tables with all these other people. It was kind of fun to see. And that's Yoshi, the owner again. And that's Yoshi and Ooh. Tina, I mean, her performance name was Tina. Here's Tina again. Now we're at Le Bar, and this was, kind of forgot this girl's name. Paquita, yeah, there you go. Paquita, she used to do Paquita la del Barrio. This girl actually is not from there, she's from Colorado, but she used to dress in my mama's house because her family didn't know that she dressed, and like they said in Espanol, era vestida. So she used to go change in my mama's bathroom before she went out. This is that little Joy Juniors in Echo Park. And back to Le Bar. These are all Le Bar. Le Bar. And that's me at Le Bar. And that's it. Done, kids. Can we get this thing out? Okay, so
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.
That was beautiful. Both of you did an extraordinary job. Thank you so much for showing us all these gorgeous photos and for talking us through them. I've assembled a series of questions for both of you. I had initially a certain order that I was going to ask them in, but I think I'm just going to do away with that and ask what feels right at the moment. So one question to the both of you. The performer, Justin Vivian Bond, says glamour is resistance. And this is something I think every queer person knows innately, especially as so many of us spent our formative years feeling pretty alien. And we look to certain facets of culture, often pop, to find a sense of belonging or a sense of beauty, or simply as a means of escape. Wearing certain kinds of clothes and makeup, or adopting certain manners and attitudes. It gives us a line of defense against a queer-phobic world and a way to define ourselves. I'm curious as to what the both of you think of Bond's glamour is resistant statement and how it might apply to you.
Well, I mean, I think glamour is like dangerous, right? I mean, when you think about, at least when I was young, and I used to go out with what at one time was considered like wild, with bleached hair and God forbid the fucking earrings. And you know, you get people throwing shit at you out of their cars. I mean, again, I'm here in Los Angeles. I don't know how it was over there, but you know, so my idea of glamour was fucking dangerous. And so it's, I mean, I think like other things like, remember I was saying yesterday that like freedom is dangerous. I mean, like there's all these things that when we were younger, we used to have, like being able to, like drunk driving. I mean, I don't know. That was mine. The danger, beauty. What about you, Linda?
Well, I mean, I know what you mean. I think both you and I were photographing in an era when, you know, it was not cool necessarily to be drag or gay even. So there was always a threat of violence. You know, you had to be kind of, you know, watch your back often. But I think that's why you know, in your photos, Reynaldo, and mine, I think that, you know, people dress, and you know, AIDS was going on for a lot of this, you know, era that we were taking photos too, if not all of it. So I think just being able to kind of, you know, party, you know, put on a dress, put on a wig, whatever, you know, bleach your hair during really difficult times was sort of resistance, you know. And a lot of it was, you know, I think some of it was escapism too. I think that because things were harsh back then, you'd had to have like a little bit of a fantasy world to, enjoy yourself in. Otherwise, you know, if you're just going to face the entire, you know, bleak world, it would be pretty depressing. So I get what Justin is saying. Yeah, it's what is it again? Glamour is resistance?
Resistance. Mm-hmm.
I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Who is this Justin Vivian? No, it's a great quote, and I do agree. Under harsh times, to show a little bit of you know, flair and flamboyance is resistance, and a healthy one at that.
It kept us on our toes.
Thank you. Exactly. You know, you become street smart, you know, because of that also.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I wore a heel or two back in the day. Remember androgyny?
Yes, exactly. That was I mean, now people would say gender fluid, or but androgyny is actually a better word. I think we should start bringing that back. And gender fluid, it's like the words themselves, gender fluid. It sounds gross. I mean, I'm not making a comment on anyone that thinks that way or feels that way. But the wording is not as pleasant as it should be to describe such beautiful people.
I know, right? We gotta be pleasant.
Right.
So what's your next question, Mr. Alec?
Well, thank you, and I shall ask it. You know, we've spent a lot of time here focusing on the past. Are either of you nostalgic? Do you feel that yesterday was better than today?
Last minute was better than this one.
Say that again, Reynaldo?
Oh, I said last minute was better than this one. Yes, I am, but yes and no. I mean, I try not to. I mean, photography is nostalgia, and you know, that's what I do. So in a way, I live in the past.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I feel sometimes people say that it's, you know, nostalgia is to be stuck in the past, but I think you can be nostalgic and just appreciate the past and really glorify it, for what it was.
Right.
You know, I mean, you don't want to be like walking around like, you know what I mean? Like completely like still stuck in 1989, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have great memories of, the people and places, etc., that you that were part of your life back then.
Right. Let's not forget how many of us are gone. So
well, exactly.
I mean, it's amazing that we documented kind of the end of that and the beginning of this. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, your book and mine, in a way, are kind of this history that I think we queer folk need to continue doing and leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for the next generation.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, I mean, I kind of always didn't think of my photos as being that important, but getting reactions from people makes me realize that, yes, they do have an importance, and they're rare. People didn't carry around cameras that much. Reynaldo, you were probably the only person snapping away for, 99% of those situations you were in.
Well, people also forget that photography is expensive. I mean, film was expensive. Having a stupid camera was expensive. Developing was expensive. So that we did it, I mean, at times that we would choose to do that instead of eating, I mean, tells you about that it was important for us, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
More than just a stupid photo, it was a necessity, or like eating, because we chose to take these photos instead of getting a burrito down the street. I mean, at least for me, I didn't have that kind of money that I could just shoot. So, I mean, that's also the other reason I don't have millions of photos, because again, it's like film was expensive.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Even for those point and shoot cameras to bring stuff to the drugstore, add it up. I mean, I probably would have taken a lot more photos. I wish I would have taken a lot more photos, honestly.
I know, well, we say that now because probably we have more money now, but at the time, I'm sure we did what we could.
What's the transition to digital been like for you both? I mean, everyone's a photographer now, right? Just snapping things away with their phone.
Well, I still don't do it. I still shoot film, by the way.
Wow.
I waited a long time before I bought a digital camera, but I hate it. And I'm digitally stupid. So, I still like film. And now I can afford it.
Well, I mean, digital, I just find to be sort of convenient. And, there's a lot of people doing beautiful digital photos, but I think too that I don't think digital, at least yet, looks as good as film. I think, film still looks richer.
Yeah.
And so, especially, I don't know, maybe even film from the past, but I think now that everyone is a photographer has caused me to take fewer photos, just because I feel like, I don't need to be the millionth person documenting, whatever, So there's enough photos, better than I could probably ever take of like, whatever.
No, but no one can take photos from your perspective. And I think that's the difference between everyone else's stuff. Everyone brings into the table their own view.
Well, that's a good point.
Experience and your own life, etc. Now, the thing with the digital, what I think is actually sad is that, and other people have said that this will be the least documented generation, because most of the stuff that people are snapping away, all that stuff gets erased by the end of the week. If it makes it for a month, it's like, wow, most of that stuff disappears. So like 20 years from now, who's gonna have, the stupid card that all the images are at? If I'm still around, I'll still have my film. And I'm just saying, it's like, it's the permanence, I think, that I believe the difference between this digital and the film. And as far as like the difference between the people snapping stuff with their phones, etc. Well, I mean, there's only something to be said for someone who's been doing this shit for like 40 years, like me. You're paying attention to things that maybe most other people will not. And again, it's also my perspective on how I'm viewing the sitter or the world or whatever. And that means something. I mean, this is the reason why not that I'm dissing anyone else, but why someone, one is a great photo and what isn't. It's like, it's a snap. I mean, you know what though? Everybody has their idea of what is good and what isn't. So whatever. I just think it's important for you to do what you want to do and not think that because there's like a zillion people doing it, you shouldn't.
All right. Well, then that does it. I'm going to start taking more photos tomorrow. Thank you, Reynaldo, for that inspiration.
That's right, bro.
In both of your books, certain people seem to have played major roles in your life. And Reynaldo, you brought some of those people up today, just now. For you, it was the performers Tatiana Volti and Miss Alex. And Linda, for you, it seems to be, Taboo in the book, Stephen Tashian, Paige, and Lady Bunny. Would you two mind talking about the significance of these figures in your life?
Well, those people that you mentioned in my photos, when as mentioned, I started doing drag in the East Village in the late 80s. And by that time, there was already some established stars, including Bunny, Lady Bunny, and Taboo. And Taboo was my first really drag friend in that scene. So Taboo was really my guide to the whole spiel. And we've remained friends since. But Taboo even gave me my name, Linda, so my real last name is Simpson. So, there was a lot, we were an important part of each other's lives, I think. Bunny, of course, has, the grand dame, of Manhattan drag. And Bunny and I have a stage persona that can be combative, but we are friends, actually. And I do admire her for at such an advanced age, still going on strong. And then Paige, my friend, who I mentioned in the book, I think I gave an indication of her, being a really important part of my life. Just part of it is because she was transgender, which I didn't even quite get in coming as a drag queen. I mean, I knew other transgender people and stuff, but she was my first close friend. And so I really learned a lot about life from that perspective from her. And, the joys and the detriments that come along with it. And I think that in my book too, there are certain people that pop up, in and out because I remain friends with them over these years. I think like Reynaldo, I knew most of the people that I was taking the photos, if not, like 99% of them. So that was part of, the reason they might pop up a lot too, just because we were in each other's lives a lot. And then, some people who are more, flamboyant or beautiful are bound to, be focused on a little more than others.
And you were both creating, Reynaldo, like you were saying earlier, you were creating a photo album with your family, and same with you, Linda.
Yeah, I don't think I realized it at the time, but yes. It's like a time capsule. It is like a photo album, and it's sort of it was kind of one big extended family in many ways.
Our queer family. I mean, it is a photo album of our queer family, even though they're not all queers in my book. But it is part of the family as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think another similarity with Reynaldo's book and mine is like, the photos that I took of like, that world doesn't exist anymore. The clubs, the bars, where the photos were taken. I mean, it's the nature, I guess, of New York to always change, but that scene has, disappeared. There's still some people that are active, but the stomping grounds are gone. And a lot of people, are no longer with us also.
Mr. Alec.
I've got another quote. Oh, I've got plenty. So here's something, since we were touching on, digital photography and social media and all of this. Many people cynically say that, with the omnipresence of social media and the sort of crushing brutality of late capitalism, that there is no more underground. What do you two think of that idea? And do you still believe an underground exists?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there will always be an underground. We just don't know it because we're fucking old farts now. I'm just saying, like, I think there'll always be an underground somewhere. I mean, there's always someone who isn't part of the mainstream. It's just when you're young, you're part of that. And now I don't know if I have the energy to be underground.
Right. And also, I think that the definition of underground has to change over the years. What was once, the standards for something being underground are different in an internet era.
I know,
so,
right? You really have to be underground.
Exactly. But something like Andy Warhol's, factory probably doesn't exist right now or ever could, but to wait around for something like that to happen again would be ridiculous. The world just isn't that way anymore.
Maybe not here, but somewhere.
Yeah. But I think, maybe in far-fetched places too.
Like Iran, right?
Like where?
Iran, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you hear of all these kids doing all this amazing shit over there, which I would love to be documenting, right?
Right. The Philippines, places like that are off the beaten track in some ways.
Right. Well, and to go back to the last question about, how these people influence, Alex and Tatiana. I didn't know Tatiana this well, but I knew Alex fairly well. And so she influenced, I don't know if influence is the right word, but I guess, yes, it was because of her that I started documenting that scene because, I documented it out of its beauty and also because I thought Mrs. Alex was cool. I thought she was super cool and I like her story. It's like, we're fucking tired of hearing the El Norte's, idea of the Latino coming here to work the fucking fields. A lot of us came for other reasons, like for love. She came for love, right? How cool is that? She crossed that border for her bodybuilder, man.
Fabulous. That's beautiful. Yeah. Could you two talk about the importance of vulnerability? I see so much of it in the way you talk about yourselves, your peers, your lives in the books. And I think it must have something to do with not only the power of your work, but your longevity as artists as well.
Boy, I better lay down on the couch for this one. This is like a psychologist question.
Sorry.
Well, let's see, my vulnerability. Well,
and I don't see it as something that's a weakness. It's something I find it, queers we're very much in tune to the feminine. So much of queer culture is, hey girl, it's vulnerability is considered this very stereotypically feminine quality, but it's also a very profound strength. And I think that's something both of you sort of embrace and exude beautifully as people and certainly as artists.
Well, I think personally, that's why I embraced drag, just because I was able to let my feminine side, come out. I mean, I was always a very feminine boy, but drag, was a different scenario because you were applauded for being feminine in many ways. And so that really allowed, I think, a lot, made me feel alive in many ways. It was a way to, express myself and find a community and, of people that were all thinking rather similarly in that regard. I think that, a lot of drag queens can be kind of stereotypes as, bitchy and, unreliable, but I found most of my drag friends to be great, and very wonderful people and looked out for each other, but that's what I really like too, the sense of community.
Yeah. How about you, Reynaldo?
Well, I don't know if I show any vulnerability would be in the images, because in a way it's not just your sitter that's opening up to you, you're opening up to them. And it's a very vulnerable moment that you both share when that shutter goes off, right? And they have to trust you and you have to trust them. And I think that's about as vulnerable as I am. I mean, vulnerability could, again, talking about danger, I think in the gay community, if there's such a thing, I don't think vulnerability is safe. I don't know.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
But Reynaldo, were you shy? Were you using the camera as a way of,
like as
interacting with people?
No.
Mm-hmm.
I've never, shy is not, I don't know. I mean, maybe, but no. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, no, I don't think so. I'm thinking maybe there was a slightness of, I don't know. Am I shy? I don't think so. No, I mean, I really, to me, this camera was, it was like my therapist, you could say, my cheap therapist. And I mentioned this, I think in the book or somewhere, in probably another interview, that photography for me was a form of like medication. It allowed me to just deal with this changing life of mine that when I was younger changed constantly, and all the moving and all the uncertainty that was my life as a child and my teen years. Photography gave it a stability because you were able to freeze these moments in time, and then you could relive them over and over and over and over. So so that's how for me this camera was, and all the people I chose to photograph were people I admired and I wanted to keep in my file. I mean, it was a little fucking creepy, but it was my way of, I don't know, just safety.
Mm-hmm.
My way of just dealing with change. Anyway, that's me.
I'm going to ask you guys one more question. I think we'll open it up to the people watching after this. Here's one. So much of what you two documented was about the sensuousness of nightlife and club culture, of bodies being together in hot, crowded rooms, dancing together, watching performances together, or just intimately socializing. I'm curious as to what you might think of the future of club and party culture will look like in a post-pandemic world. Because for queer people, especially, bars and nightclubs and cabarets and other places like that, they're still pretty important as a place to socialize and find kinship.
Well, my thought is that when people are finally able to socialize again, it'll be like everyone will be out like crazy, rubbing their bodies against each other, etc. Not just in the gay bars, but like everywhere. I don't think anyone will ever turn down a chance to go out again ever, because we all, crave social interaction after this desert. But I don't know. I mean, gay bars and clubs seem to be disappearing. They're not quite as major a part, I think, in, queer life as maybe when I was growing up, just because there's a lot more, freedoms for younger gay people to go to anywhere that they want, which is good. But I do miss a lot of that bar and club culture. I mean, like Reynaldo said, we're a little, more advanced at this point. So it doesn't mean I'd be running out to a bar and a club every night. But I certainly think that the more gay bars and the more gay clubs there are, the better in many ways.
Right. I mean, I wasn't a bar queen, but I miss having them there. It was nice to know they were there. And now most of the stuff from when I was younger, all those bars are gone.
Are there any more of those showgirl places?
You know, I don't think La Plaza's still around. I mean, hopefully all still around after this pandemic. But I think out of all the ones I showed, just La Plaza's still around.
Mm-hmm.
And that had been around since the 70s. My mother used to go there. And, you know, I actually took my mama there in the late 80s. And there used to be this waiter that was always super rude to me. Just whatever, he was a drag. So one day I showed up with my mama and her girlfriend, and oh my God, when the waiter saw my mama, he freaked out and comes running. He's like, copy, and he gave us the best table and the whole shebang. And apparently my mama and him were like friends back in the late 70s. How funny is that? I didn't even know my mama had even been to that club. God forbid, new people there. It's a small world. But I guess the reason I'm bringing this up, it was nice to see that continuance. That my mama had gone there, I went there, but you know, a lot of these younger folk aren't going to be able to have that experience. I mean, is it a good experience? I don't know, but it was nice for me. I thought it was cool that was there and that my mama had been there, etc.
That's incredible. Silver Lake Lounge is still around though, right?
Yeah, but they usually just have like, you know, these teeny bands now or whatever, young folk bands.
Wow.
I'm sure they have drag shows, but they might. I don't think so though.
Oh, really? That stinks. Well, I got a whole list of questions from some folks watching right now, so I'm going to read some off to you if you don't mind. This one is from someone named Jonathan Alexander. And this person asks, I love the idea of glamour as danger. Thank you. Is there also a class dimension to it? A send-up of high class while also turning high class to queer ends?
Reynaldo, do you want to take that for a moment?
I guess I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the question.
I guess they're asking if this idea of like queers embracing glamour, is there some kind of class dimension to it, is what they're asking. And if so, like how do they pervert it?
How did we pervert it?
Or we can just go to another question.
I think that sometimes, I mean, certainly some of the drag queens, especially in the East Village, you know, were on, you know, very small budgets, you know what I mean? Like $2, $3. And everyone would go to thrift stores, but the point was to kind of look glam, you know, and even like upper crust, you know? So it was sort of subverting, you know, the fact that you didn't have any money, but you could still look great, you know?
Yeah, I guess I didn't understand that aspect of it, but I mean, yeah, most, if not 98% of the people in all the photos I showed were like poor folk. And, you know, we do is, like she was saying, I don't know if we emulate as much as we take what's around us and create what we think glamour is. I mean, is that subversive? Is that?
I think that's something that's deeply embedded in every queer person's DNA, right?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Shit around you and, yeah, to take the shit around you and turn it into something beautiful.
Oh,
you know?
Some alchemy. I know, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if it's as far as like being a class thing, I don't know. I mean, that's the one I don't know.
That's all right. We'll go to another question. This one's from the artist Marlene McCarty. As you've alluded to, gender fluidity gives young queer people a completely different language with which to define themselves. Do you think this affects drag, and do you see drag moving into the future in this realm of gender fluidity?
Well, I think it already has. I think that it hasn't and hasn't. I mean, listen, I've done this before, and I sound kind of like an old fart, but sometimes, you know, there is a newer movements where they think that they are reinventing gender or with brand new definitions of gender, and it's nothing new. There's always been people then have crossed the spectrum. And maybe it's empowering now to have some language that, identifies people. But like I said, gender fluid, or what's the other term that I'm looking for right now?
Neutral.
Gender neutral.
I'm all about gender neutrality, but
Well, they're like what's the word I'm looking for, Alex? That
androgyny, or you were talking about androgyny or gender fluidity?
Yeah, non-binary. Thank you, Alan Schneiderman. Non-binary. I mean, it's all stuff that's very interesting to me, and I think a lot, for many people, it's a very sincere expression. But I don't think that it's anything new in many ways. It just has new definitions and sort of a new franticness about it sometimes, with a lot of, you know what I mean, tisking if you don't get appropriate words right. I just find I find change interesting, of course, and about gender. What was the question again? I feel like I'm rambling.
It was no. It was just like, how do you see gender fluidity affecting drag?
Oh, gender fluidity affecting drag. I think that gender fluidity is part of drag. Some people present themselves more womanly. I mean, for male drag queens, present themselves as more womanly. Some present themselves without, for instance, any boobs, maybe not even wearing a wig. And that's all legit too, as long as you can make it look great and creative.
Well, I don't have so much to say about all that. I mean, I'm not in that world so much, but I'm all about screwing with gender. I mean, if we could get rid of just like all this gender stuff that we've grown accustomed to, male, female thing, I'm cool with this. And as far as, I mean, like she was saying, you can't reinvent the wheel, but you can change what the wheel looks like, right?
Good point.
So, I mean, I'm not sure how it's going to change drag, but I'm excited to see what it will look like.
This is from someone named Adam Tuero. How did you establish being comfortable taking pictures in settings where people might not want to be photographed? How did you earn the trust of your subjects?
Well, I didn't do that. If someone didn't wanted a photo, I shouldn't say I never have, because I was just thinking of a photo I took of, people hustling in the park. That was actually the only image I've taken without asking or without the other people knowing or being cool with it. Just because for what I've done, the kind of work I've done, I wasn't, that was never needed. I never, plus or wanted. I never wanted to do something that someone didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think, I actually think if I could pass any knowledge to the younger queens, it's just like, don't do it. If someone doesn't want to be documented, photographed, whatever, filmed, just leave us shit alone. Leave it alone. You'll be fine with one less photo.
And I think that back in the day, like in the time of my drag explosion photos, a lot of gay bars especially, and clubs disallowed cameras because a lot of people didn't want to be outed.
Right.
They were closeted. So, cameras were not a common occurrence because of that also.
Right. And there had to be a certain amount of trust if you were going to be in there with a camera. And that's what I was saying earlier with the images I did in the back rooms and stuff. I mean, people really had to trust you for you to do stuff like this. I mean, a few years ago, I went to a friend's function in a drag ball. And it was so funny to be in the back taking photos of all these people changing and stuff, because they didn't give a hell. I mean, they were like, taking everything off and everything was perfect. I mean, that was such a different experience from, 25 years ago or 30 years ago, that, people weren't this open about those kind of things.
Yeah, and I knew all the people most of the people that I was taking photos with too. So I wasn't randomly going up to, I mean, occasionally, but I knew almost everyone that I was taking photos. And I would ask people sometimes if I didn't know them. I would just run up paparazzi style and take their photo.
I agree. I'm not into that at all.
I'm going to ask one more question from the audience, and this one's addressed to Reynaldo, but I think this applies to both of you. And this is from a woman by the name of Laura Gutierrez. I would love to hear more about this notion of family that Reynaldo mentioned in his presentation. I was struck by the high number of photos in the bathroom, speaking of bathrooms, the process of getting dressed and made up captured beautifully. So queer intimacy and the familial run through both, and the bathroom and the mirrors play roles in activating that. Would love to hear more about the mirrors in Reynaldo's photos.
Well, it's funny that she mentions the toilets because, and I thought of putting together a show of just toilet photos because it was the only place where a light bulb. It was the only room in the house with a actual light. And so if I wanted to photograph someone, I always took them to the bathroom. I mean, that's why the bathroom thing. And as far as this family thing, well, you know, I don't know, I'm a very emotional twin. So sometimes I get very emotional about my queer brothers and sisters and all the suffering we've been through, blah, blah, blah. And my Latino family, you know, which sometimes they're not the same family, sometimes they are. And I mean, that was partly the reason of doing this book, is letting my Latino family, it was let them know that we once lived in this city. I mean, this used to be a Latino city, or at least that we were here. I mean, there was a time where I really felt we were going to be completely wiped out, you know, and not for any other reasons than just the high cost of living here. It really, I mean, it really went out of control. It's crazy. I mean, I grew up paying $400 a month for rent in the same place that you would pay now $2,000. I mean, it's insane. Who can afford this? So I guess in the beginning, I thought for sure we're all gonna disappear from here. And then this one kid I was speaking to I was telling him how, you know, I had done all these photos of Latino folk in Echo Park. And he was so shocked and surprised. He couldn't believe that Echo Park was a Latino neighborhood. And that kind of freaked me out. I was like, wow, that's fucking weird. And so that's when I started thinking, you know, I should put something together and kind of leave it as a memento for my folk to, you know, because when people do research and stuff, we're always found in other people's footnotes. And I thought it'd be nice for once to be the main dish. That's what I did.
Yeah, I think of my photos as being documenting a family as much, but as a large group of friends. And of course that can be just as important as a family. It's just how you define it. But I you know, I think it's important too, because I think that the history of drag is often very muddled, and a lot of, like, I didn't really know what came before me very much. I mean, I was aware of, like, you know, the Warhol Superstars and Divine and stuff, but there was a lot of young drag queens that see my photo show are like, oh, I didn't know that existed. And so I think it is kind of important to get the word out and keep that history going about what has, you know, helped, you know, pave the path in many ways. And, you know, if that makes me and Reynaldo, you know, revered elders, I'll take that role.
I know, right?
I don't know. So anyways, good question. Can I ask one question of Reynaldo?
Sure.
Reynaldo, how did you decide on your cover image for your book?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I love the photo.
Yeah, me too.
You know, the woman in this image to the left, the one with the mask and the hair, was a very dear friend of mine that died of cancer. And I thought it was a nice way of, I don't know, memorializing her. She will live forever. That's why.
Beautiful.
Very sweet.
Thank you both. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anything else you guys would like to tell the audience or?
Yes, I want to thank Jennifer and Alex and Linda. Thank you guys for everything. This has been amazing. Even if I was nervous in the beginning, I chilled out probably after.
You should have seen rehearsal. Reynaldo was a mess. No.
I was.
We all do what we can before the camera.
I know, right? I had to just smile.
You came together for showtime. No, I'd like to echo that. Thank you so much, Alex, and Jennifer and Brian, the tech person. And Reynaldo, it was great to meet you. Reynaldo and I have never met, so it was really fun to meet you.
I have been wanting to meet you, Miss Linda.
We'll keep this conversation going.
Thank you both so much for everything. You're both wonderful artists, wonderful people, wonderful storytellers. And I encourage everyone watching right now, go out and buy Reynaldo Rivera's Provisional Notes from a Disappeared City, and go out and buy Linda Simpson's The Drag Explosion, which you can actually look up on domainbooks.org and pre-order. And Jennifer Krasinski, thank you. Brian Green, thank you. And to our dear and esteemed and deeply glamorous guests, mwah, a big, huge kiss. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and everything.
Thanks, and thanks to the wonderful audience that tuned in.
Bye, guests. Goodbye, guests.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Bye, take care. Thank you.